You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. Thanks to Evans Mensah for holding the fort whilst I was away last week. And here is Samson's take. Contempt on strike. Contempt on strike. As you may be aware, judicial service staff are on strike. They have very important demands that they are making of their employer. But it doesn't appear their employer is listening to them at all. That is why their employer can afford to let them stay on the strike regardless of what is going on in the courts. Litigants are frustrated. The courts have been shut. And who is really listening to them? As you listen and read the statements that they put out in respect of their strike, they have given more than sufficient time for their issue to be dealt with. They were made to enjoy the COLA that was given to civil servants. And that COLA was eventually withdrawn. But people who are like them had another window where they enjoyed a raise in their pay by about 30% or so. And they remain where they are without a penny being added to them. And the point is that there is a process to review their pay all the time. This time, as we speak, this process ought to have started, perhaps concluded sometime by January. There's no information and there's no progress whatsoever. Those who were supposed to do this to get them their increase didn't do it. So they decided to begin the process by themselves. And that process has been stalled. They gave notice, they gave time, nobody bothered. Now they went to give indication of their intention to go on strike. And the National Labour Commission calls them for a meeting. In that meeting, the other stakeholders from the presidency and from the Ministry of Finance, as in more particularly the Labour Ministry and the Finance Ministry, and also representation from the Office of the Chief of Staff, were supposed to be here in that meeting. They didn't turn up. They failed to show up. They were alone in that meeting. And the Labour Commission decided to take upon itself finding defenses and justifications why those who were supposed to be at the table were not there. They disrespected them so much, or that they planned together with the commission to frustrate them. That's what they suspect. The commission, they say, attempted to justify the absence of those who were supposed to be there. And when they asked them for an adjournment so that they will be given opportunity to return at a later date, the commission was insisting on a longer time than they would admit. Guess what? The commission issued a ruling asking them not to do anything and wait until the period they had given them had been exhausted. The ruling was dated the previous day before the day of the meeting. So they asked themselves, did you plan this and put a ruling together even before we come to the meeting? The Labour Commission subsequently withdrew that ruling is sent to them. So there was no ruling that they were to abide by. Nonetheless, they still said, we'll exercise some good faith, and sort of agreed in principle to the time that the Labour Commission had given. Now, 2 weeks had come to pass. They wanted only a week's adjournment. The Labour Commission insisted on 2 weeks. The 2 weeks was to end on the 24th of May. By then, too, not a single person had made any contact with them. That is how much the disrespect is. So they decided that they would strike, and no one should blame them for anything. They say what is good for the goose is good for the gander. If you took away the cola from them and public sector workers' incomes have been increased by 30%, then they also deserve to receive an addition to their salaries. Their salaries must be reviewed as required by law. I think, in all good conscience, one can only, agree with them and hope that their concerns will be resolved. The courts have been brought to a halt. That is not a joke. At the same time, we are now back to the debate about contempt and how it is done. And this is what I'll say. For many years, we have come back to this debate. I remember how Kweku Bako, Asa Nkrumah, all of them continued to preach that there was a need to pass the Contempt of Court Act to guide the process. The politicians forget about it once they are out of the trouble, when it affects them. When it doesn't affect them, they don't think much about it. This is how our society has been structured. Now, in all good conscience, it is difficult to think that it is okay to still use the common law contempt powers to operate and punish everybody in the realm. Those from whom we got that common law contempt put it into law as a Contempt of Court Act in 1981. And we are still using what we inherited from them. The problem is that there must be rules to guide the process. It clearly doesn't sit well to be the complainant, to be the prosecutor, to be the judge in a matter involving yourself, particularly in contempt ex facie curiae, contempt that is committed outside of the face of the court. So we need to look at this. It's a serious matter. And when Atacha appeared before the court, he asked the question, is this a mercy chamber or a seat of justice? You appear summoned for contempt and you must, plead and ask for mercy, otherwise you get to jail. That approach is completely wrong. The rules, as we have known them, applying even in the common law contempt, ought to be what should hold. And that's by way of my take this morning. I will return shortly to welcome my guest as we go into the two biggest issues that we are canvassing for you this morning. What will be the nature of the review of the flagship programs, and how exactly is Freddie Bly selling 50% of Ghana's stake in our oil fields. We'll be right back.